don't know if you ever brought a base to a mart, Deputy Barry, but no doubt you'll tell us.
So, Count Corla, 355 workers laid off today at ABP. 6,000 workers laid off in total at this point. Thousands more facing layoff, and those who have been laid off temporarily fearing that it will be more than temporary. Now, in this dispute to date, we have heard the voice of the meat industry, we have heard the voice of the government, and we've heard, at least to some extent, the voice of the farmers. It's time for the voice of the meat factory workers to now be heard. And I would encourage them to raise their voices, and I would encourage them to get organised to defend their own interests in their area, in their workplace, and throughout the country. It's a national issue. Other speakers have pointed out that meat factory workers have attempted to join trade unions and have attempted to win recognition in their workplace for their trade unions. And that recognition has been denied. The attempt has been made to push them back when they've tried to organise. When the meat factories reopen, they should be organised, unionised workplaces. And the meat factory workers need to begin a discussion on that now. They can take a degree of inspiration, actually, from the farmers, because the farmers have stood and the farmers have fought their ground. And they fought their ground against powerful forces in the establishment. The meat industry, the beef barons are a powerful force. And there has been attempts made to use the courts against them. There have been attempts made to use court injunctions against them. And the farmers have stood their ground and have defied that. And they've defied it successfully. And workers, not just meat factory workers, by the way, should and can take some inspiration from that. I would think that if meat factory workers are discussing the current position they find themselves in, and the threat of temporary layoffs being more than temporary layoffs, that one of the issues that at least would need to be discussed and considered is the idea of saying, we go into the meat factories, we stay here, these are our jobs, and we're not leaving until we have our jobs back. That is something that would need to be at least discussed and considered, in my opinion. Now, when the plants open back up again, will there be a fair and just settlement, or will there not? There should be a just settlement for the farmers and for their families. The farmers say that for €10 paid on beef, that they get €2. That €2.90 goes to the beef processors, and that a majority, €5.10, goes to the big retailers. If that is the case, that is an extremely unjust division of the spoils. Certainly it is the case, and can't be argued otherwise, that we have an average farm income in this country of $23,000 last year, and an average dry stock farm income of $10,000. There are farmers on those picket lines who live in poverty with their families. That is a statement of fact. The core issue here is the base price for the cattle. It's gone from €4 per kilo last year to €3.45 now. And the talks at the weekend did not change that. It seems to me that the mood among the protesting farmers is that that base price issue must be addressed. And the final say on whether the protest continues or not will not be in the hands of the beef processors or the government or the president, for that matter. It will be with those farmers at the gates. They're the ones who will have to make the decisions, and it would seem to me that there needs to be an increase in the base price in order to have any chance of a settlement here. By the way, if they reject the current proposal, they have a right to reject it. It's a democratic issue for a group who are involved in a campaign, and it would then have to be resolved on the basis of a better offer being made. Now, the Labour Party have left the chamber. I always enjoy listening to Deputy Penrose. He referred twice to the Labour Party being mistaken for being communists. I don't know if there are too many people who'd be making that mistake these days. And he also commented on, I think, a relative of his who he said was happy as Larry, which I thought was an interesting phrase to use in a debate about the beef industry. But I think he was right to say that there's other crises looming for the beef industry. Brexit, clearly one of them. Now, the government position, as I understand it, is that in the event of strong blows to agribusiness, to the beef industry in the course of, say, for example, a no-deal Brexit, that there will be subsidies provided by the state to the industry. One of the aspirations that's stated is that that will help to protect jobs. Although, as I understand it, the Minister might clarify, as I understand it, and the Minister might clarify, it's not intended to make protection of jobs a condition of state aid. It seems to be more a kind of a hit and hope type of thing. Here's the state aid, and we hope that you don't make as many people redundant or laid off as would otherwise be the case. But in reality, what is being proposed here is to give state subsidies to some of the richest business people in the country, the people who dominate the beef trade, the beef barons, who have, in my opinion, attempted to draw out this dispute in order to starve farmers back to work, in order to get their own way and defend their own profits, and who, as other speakers have rightly said, have attempted to use thousands of workers, including low-paid, vulnerable workers with families, as pawns to get their way. Now, I'm in favour of a state intervention in order to protect jobs in the event of a Brexit crisis. But I'm in favour of a different type of state intervention. I went on a radio station last week, C103, it would be a station well known to the Minister, Patricia Messenger, an interviewer well known to the Messenger. They'd been debating the beef crisis for an hour beforehand. I hadn't had a chance to listen to the previous debate. I was coming in cold on it. And I raised what I thought might be a new idea for the debate, the idea that the beef industry should be taken out of the hands of the beef barons, taken out of private ownership, and in the interests of society, placed in public ownership and under democratic control. And to my surprise, she said to me, you would be surprised at the number of phone calls and messages that we've gotten today to support that very idea, even before you've raised it yourself in the discussion. I think she thought maybe that I'd been listening in and I was jumping on the bandwagon, but I was coming in on it cold. I think that's an idea that would be a popular idea in society. I think it's something that would be popular among meat workers who would see it linked to defence of jobs. And I think it would be popular among protesting farmers who would see it as a way to achieve a just solution, a more just solution than they're going to get from the beef barons and the profiteers. So, putting that on the table in this debate, public ownership under democratic control of the beef industry. I could make some points about the supermarkets there, but I think time is going to preclude me from that. Maybe I'll take that up some other day. The final point I want to make is that Friday is a day of global strike action on the issue of climate change. Once more, school students across the world will leave their schools, come out onto the streets and demand change to protect the climate and defend the environment. Friday's strike will have a new element to it. For the first time, significant numbers of workers, of trade unionists, will participate. I understand that in Britain, for example, 4 major trade unions are calling on people to take action on Friday. That will be a new element, although in the main it will still be a protest of young people. That shows which way the wind is blowing, so to speak. The idea of an agriculture based on beef, primarily given the climate crisis, is something which is not over time sustainable. In any case, there's a new generation who are eating and will eat a lot less meat. Many of them have made the decision not to eat meat at all for the reasons of what's happening with the climate. So we need a sustainable agriculture, and that means that there has to be a transition away from beef towards a more sustainable form of agriculture. But that transition must be a just transition. And when I say a just transition, it has to be a just transition for all, including the workers in the industry and the farmers who supply the industry at the moment. That cannot and will not be achieved on the basis of market economics. That cannot and will not be achieved on the basis of control of the industry by beef barons and profiteers. It can only be done. It can only be done on the basis of state intervention, subsidies, and a transition which is based on public ownership of that industry under democratic control of the workers within the industry, but also of the farmers that supply it as well.